Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in. Hello, podcast listeners. Excited to have another episode of the podcast with you here today. And what I'm going to be talking about today is a topic that I actually probably say this to all my clients at least once when we are working together. And hopefully, as this podcast episode unfolds, you're going to see why and realize that I'm not really actually a mean coach. But the topic is you suck. You suck. I say that to my clients, literally point blank to them. And the reason why is you're going to see even more and more, like I said, as the podcast unfolds. The reason why I say that is because it's so hard to hear. It's so hard to accept. And our fear of being bad at stuff is a huge stumbling block in getting where we need to go. And I'm going to give you my confession for today, stepping into the confessional as always. This little confession for you is kind of like it's one of those confessions like when you go into a job interview and you're like, what's your worst quality? Oh, I care too much about my job or something like that. I hope it doesn't come off that way, but that's kind of how I feel like it sounds. My confession for this week is I sometimes have a hard time coming up with confessions for this podcast. And the reason why is not because I'm so great at parenting. I never screw up or, I figured all this stuff out. So I have nothing that I realize is a mistake or think I've done wrong. It's not that at all. I'm screwing up all the time. I make mistakes every minute of the day, just like everybody else does. And there's absolutely huge swaths and unexplored frontiers of parenting that I have never even experienced and don't know how to handle. So it's certainly not for lack of mistakes that I can't come up with confessions. But the real reason why, and I hope this will actually be an inspiration to you, is I have been doing this work for so long. And one of the biggest parts of my own personal work has been accepting the fact that I make mistakes and realizing that mistakes are not that big of a deal. So I would say like 9 times out of 10, my parenting screw ups really just don't seem like noteworthy to me. They're not worth even remembering, let alone confessing on a podcast. Not because they're not big, not because they don't hurt my kids, not because they're not real screw ups. They absolutely are. I just have released so much shame and self-flagellation and perseveration on my mistakes that I literally forgot them. I forget them. They slide off. It's like water off a duck's back or whatever. And, they're not really worth talking about half the time. And so I really hope that that's a little bit kind of like inspirational for you in the sense that you too could get to this place where you are a normal human, a mere mortal. You're not this amazing god or goddess raising your child. You're screwing up all the time, and it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So I hope that kind of like inspires you or helps you feel like, ooh, that is a goal worth pursuing, because it absolutely is. Okay. And that's what we're going to talk about today with this topic of you suck. Because I can't tell you how many times I am in session with a client and we're talking about a new parenting technique. So maybe it's like a love and logic technique, like enforceable statements. Enforceable statements are actually a very great example of a place where we all super suck. Because enforceable statements are a way of setting and enforcing boundaries with our children that is very unusual and new to almost all of us. Most of us grew up in circumstances where people just told us what to do when we were kids. Go put your shoes on. It's time for bed. Go to sleep. Stop crying. Eat your dinner. Go get me a gin and tonic. Maybe that was just me. No, just kidding. But lots of directives, people just telling us what to do. Enforceable statements are really like wordsmithing. It's really kind of setting a rule or a boundary for ourselves, which is like, I'm going to do my absolute best not to be bossing my kid around all of the time. I'm going to actually do my best to not communicate with my children through directives and orders. Okay, well, that feels really, really awkward. And in the very beginning, when you start using enforceable statements, you suck at it. You absolutely do. And I can't tell you how many clients I have who either don't even start, they do it for like a day, and then they're like, oh, I can't, this sounds really weird, or this seems awkward, or it's not working. That's what I get a lot from clients. It's not working. And it's like, okay, well, are you committed to making it work? Because if you are, let's look at that. What did you try? What didn't work about it? What did work about it? Because I guarantee there's at least one thing that did. How can we lean into the stuff that did work? All of those things. And so let's think about, like, for example, go put your shoes on. That would be a not enforceable statement. Why is it not enforceable? Well, because you can't actually make somebody do something with their body. You're not the boss of other people's bodies, even your kid's body, you're not the boss of. And it's a very narrow window of time where you could actually like shove a kid's foot into a shoe. And that narrow window of time is when they're much younger than the age where you would tell them, go put your shoes on. It's like when they're babies and you would never bother saying, go put your shoes on, because like you can't put shoes on, so I have to put your shoes on, right? But once they're at the stage where you could say, go put your shoes on, you actually can't make them put their shoes on. It's not enforceable. You're trying to own somebody else's body and tell them what to do. Switching to an enforceable statement might be, I'm happy to take you to your friend's house as soon as you have your shoes on, or we'll get to leave as soon as everyone has their shoes on, or so many different examples of where we say, if you have your shoes on, now we can go do an X, Y, and Z. And now it becomes the child's choice. Like, okay, so I'm either going to put my shoes on or I'm not. And if I do, this is what happens. And if I don't, this is what happens. Holy cow. Now we've switched to this place where we're not bossing our kids around, which isn't just like a cool, like good vibey thing to do. It's a thing that helps our kids realize that they're the boss of their lives, that they are responsible, that they have choice and autonomy, and that ultimately whatever comes out of their decision is on them. They start connecting the dots between the choices they make and the outcomes they create, which is literally what discipline is all about, right? So those enforceable statements are really, really huge. I have clients all the time who try it once or twice and then they don't keep going. And the reason why is because they suck at it. We all suck at enforceable statements in the beginning. So I was trying to give you like a little like formula that's like, I'm happy to do X when Y has happened, or I do XYZ when for kids who do ABC. You kind of fit that stuff in, or I'm happy to blah when such and such has happened, right? Sometimes I like to give you those little formulas because it helps so much, but it is super awkward. It is super like you're like reorganizing and wordsmithing while you're talking. It sounds terrible. And then parents come back to me and they're like, well, it didn't really work, or my kid just looked at me funny when I talked to him that way, or he still didn't put his shoes on or whatever. And we have this conversation where it's like, yeah, because you know what? You're trying something new and you're not good at it. And let's remember that as parents, our kids learn the best through experiences and modeling. So all day long, we are modeling for them the way that we interact and interface with our suckiness, the way that we interact and interface with the fact that we make mistakes, that we're not good at something, how we learn something new, all of that is modeled for our children. If you're parenting the way we talk about on this podcast, which is to say, first of all, mistakes are no big deal. They're actually the secret sauce. Like if kids are learning through experiences, what are they experiencing? They're experiencing the outcome of their mistakes and learning to think differently and try something different next time, make a different choice next time. That means that they have to be screwing up all of the time. And if we have a culture in our family where screwing up is bad, where making a mistake is something to be ashamed of, embarrassed about, hide it from other people, deny it, become defensive about it, or, and this is even the worst, not even try because you might fail, how are kids ever going to get that other way better and healthier and more important message of I'm going to screw up and that's okay? we need to be modeling that for our children. So when you try something new, you can't ever get good at something without sucking at it first. You have to first be bad at something before you get good at it. And that is so hard for so many of us to accept. The other place I see this happening a lot, because we do a lot of work around emotions. Okay. A lot of work with my clients around, oh, okay, so you keep losing your temper with your kiddo, super common. What would you rather do? Well, I would rather obviously stay calm and not lose my temper. Okay, well, what do we need to do so that you don't lose your temper? Okay, well, I actually have to process my emotions. I have to feel how I feel. I need to take space. I need to do X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? That's not how you've been doing things your whole life. So you suck at it. You suck at taking space. You suck at processing your emotions. You suck at identifying your emotions. You suck at giving yourself permission to have your emotions. Like all of these are new things. This is why I never work with anyone for less than 6 months at a time, y'all, because the first 3 months are all about resisting the fact that you are not very good at this shit right now. And it takes a long time for us to accept that it's not a problem. It's not a problem for us to be bad at stuff. And it's not a problem for us to struggle and fail and take a while and really kind of like almost be beating our heads against the wall with stuff for a while. That's something that we try to avoid in so many ways. And it's not just about parenting either. I literally just got off a call with a client who I'm doing business coaching with. And she had this great, marketing effort in her business. It yielded some results, but not the exact results that she wanted. And she's identified over a while working with me that her pattern is to, when something doesn't go exactly perfectly, pivot and just never do that again. Well, that doesn't really work in business. In business, you kind of have to pick your lane of how you're going to run your business and how you're going to market, and at least commit to it for a while before you decide that it's not going to work. Guess what? It doesn't work in parenting either. And this is what we see all the time. And I'm super, super common in my discovery calls I always ask, what have you tried so far about this? And people have like a list of like 10 different things. Well, we tried a sticker chart. We tried consequence. We tried taking away. We tried timeout. We tried yelling. We've tried spanking, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll ask them like, oh, okay, well, how long, for example, did you try the sticker chart? And how long, for example, did you use timeout? And it's always like, well, we did it a few times, but it didn't work. Or I tried it for a week, but then, it didn't seem like it was working. Nothing works when you only do it a couple of times. Inconsistency is the thing that's not working. It's not even the parenting technique that you're trying. That's not the thing that doesn't work. It's the inconsistency that doesn't work. It's the same thing with this client in her business. Like she can say like, oh, this marketing effort, it didn't work. Or we could say like, I haven't figured out how to make it work yet, or it's starting to work and there's some tweaks I need to make. Right. But if she's constantly changing her marketing strategy every time, her marketing strategy is simply inconsistency. Just like in parenting, if you are spanking one week, yelling in the other week, taking away privileges the next day, using a sticker chart for a day, your parenting strategy is inconsistency. And that is a strategy that doesn't work. And one of the biggest drivers why we're inconsistent in parenting is because we are not committed to a strategy. We're looking for instant gratification. But the other thing that's behind it is this feeling of like, I'm not doing a good job. I stink at this and this feels wrong. Like we have this almost a Pollyanna belief that if we were on the right track with our parenting or any other strategy, doesn't have to be even about parenting, it would just work immediately. And we would have this like the heavens part, God shines his light down upon us and immediately things fall into place. That like never happens. So I really encourage you to do your homework, like listening to this podcast, for example, or coming to one of my workshops or setting up a consultation with me. However, reading parenting books doesn't have to be obviously you don't have to be the only source of parenting information to you. But as you're doing that homework and you start to kind of get a feel for, okay, this approach to parenting seems the right approach to me. It makes the most sense. It feels the most aligned to me. Like I really can get behind this. The next piece in this puzzle is commit and know that you are going to suck at this for a while. You are absolutely going to suck at it. And that doesn't mean that you picked the wrong strategy. It just means that you're starting something that you've never done before and you're not very good at it yet. It doesn't mean that it's not going to work. It doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision. It doesn't mean that you need to run away from the feeling of failure at all. We want to run toward that. When it's a fail forward, we want to run toward that feeling. So hopefully that's helpful for you today. And I'm always going to wrap up our sessions with a question from the listener. Oh no, I lost it. I had it here and I lost it. Here it is. This question is from a listener named Rebecca, and she asked about sleep regression. She said she's got where did she write it? She has a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. They used to be great for night time, but lately they're terrible. And we even let them stay up a little later than usual. But lately it's been almost an hour trying to get them to sleep. Lots of frustration, lots of redirection with bedtime. The oldest keeps the youngest up, which turns to her getting out of bed, and it becomes a whole thing. Okay. Oh, and the kids share a room. That's super important. So with kids sharing a room, my suggestion, if it's ever possible for your kids not to share a room, that's the way to go. This case, Rebecca says that that's not an option. So, okay, we got plan B. My suggestion is to, first of all, not put the kids to bed at the same time at first until kids get the feel for the discipline around bedtime. I would not put them to bed at the exact same time. And I might even just in the beginning have your youngest go to bed at first in your bedroom until she's asleep. Because you're going to have like about a week of sticking this out. So this is really a good segue into this whole like you suck idea. Like it's going to be rocky at first. Like it's going to be a mess. Kids aren't going to like it. You're going to have backlash and all of that stuff. I just want you to remember you're already having an hour of torture and misery right now. Wouldn't it be great if that hour of torture and misery was actually working towards teaching them something and getting this behavior under control? So hopefully that helps you feel like it's worth it to stick it out. But what's really going to happen is you're going to get frustrated because it's quote unquote not working and you're going to feel like you're doing it wrong or something like that, which you might be. And that's okay because you're going to get better and better. So stick it out for at least, I would say, 2 weeks. You need to have discipline in place around bedtime. So for your older kiddo who's 6, she's old enough for delayed consequences. So I would suggest putting the 2-year-old to bed in your room at first while you put the 6-year-old to bed in their room. And then whenever the 6-year-old runs a number and doesn't respect whatever the boundaries are around bedtime, there needs to be a consequence. Because she's old enough for delayed consequences, you can say, oh, you know what? It looks like we're not going to get to do X, Y, and Z in the morning. Or that's too bad. Since it's an enforceable statement. Like, for example, let's say you have like Eggo waffles in your freezer as one breakfast option. You might say like, we call that treat breakfast in our house because it's not very common and it's not super healthy, right? So in my family, I might say something like treat breakfast is for kids who do a good job at night time, for example. Other things could be like stuffies and loveys and stuff like that for sure in the moment. But the point is, think about what the right consequence is for this kiddo. And that's the consequence that she gets when she misbehaves. You got to be super calm. Remember all the stuff that we've talked about neutrality and non-attachment and all of that stuff. Because if you get frustrated, none of this will work. It has to be like, well, looks like you chose not to have treat breakfast tomorrow. Oh, looks like you chose not to sleep with your stuffies tonight. No problem. I'm sure you'll make a better choice tomorrow. She will scream, she will cry, blah, blah, blah. This is why it's nice to have them separated, because whatever tantrum she needs to be able, like the problem with kids sleeping together is that because they're sleeping together, we are reticent to consequence them because the backlash of their consequence is going to disrupt the other sleeper, right? We need to take that out of the equation so that you're not afraid to discipline around bedtime. Once 6-year-old gets the memo, like, oh, okay, mom is not messing around at bedtime anymore. My misbehavior at bedtime is not going to work out very well for me. She's going to have her routine sorted out. Then you can start bedtime at the same time again. But for a while, I would have them either stagger their bedtime or put 2-year-old to bed in your room just for like the first week or something like that. to give you yourself that space and time to discipline them separately, because they're going to be doing the same thing with a 2-year-old. It's a little bit different with 2-year-olds because of the delayed consequence thing. So that's going to be a little bit different. You might have to come up with different consequences that she can experience right then and there. Like, oh, you know what? For example, my son loves it when I leave the door open, but if he is getting out of his bed and he keeps turning the light on or whatever, the door gets closed. So that's a really great example. Then that's something that's more appropriate for a 2-year-old because it's right then and it's immediate in the moment. So once the 2 kids get the memo that like, this is how bedtime works, we don't mess around at bedtime, then you can start putting them to bed in the same room. I would still stagger the bedtimes. So I would put your 2-year-old to bed first and then put your 6-year-old to bed once the 2-year-old's asleep. And then I would start doing bedtime at the same time. And that 2-year-old, just because she's going to sleep in your bed doesn't mean she's going to stay in your bed. Like once you go to bed, just move her into the other room. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful, Rebecca. And I hope that this whole idea of like giving yourself permission not to be good at something is helpful, because I think that's one of the biggest reasons. Like I literally had somebody just this week who has been thinking about working with me for a whole year. In fact, I did a consultation with her like a year ago, and then we reconnected just recently. The one biggest reason why she was holding back from signing up to participate in my coaching group was because she thought she was going to do a bad job, not bad job parenting, or not even a bad job learning the parenting skills. She was going to do a bad job at the group, meaning I maybe won't come to every call, or what if I don't do the workbook, or what if I don't participate in the community, or whatever. She literally was holding herself back from getting support and help because she was telling herself, like, I have to do a good job at getting support and help. Bullshit. Okay. First of all, when you come into my group, there's no expectation for perfection whatsoever. Everybody takes hiatuses and comes back to the work, all of that stuff. But also, you are going to be bad at everything, including making it your routine. Like I have clients all the time who are like, oh, shoot, I forgot to put it on my calendar. It takes them a while to get into the swing of it. Oh, okay, cool. I'm going to see you every Thursday. It takes a while. And that's okay. Just do it. Do it poorly. Hurry up and go and do the part where you suck so you can get to the part where you're good at this stuff right away. Like all you're doing is postponing being good at something by postponing being bad at it, if that makes any sense. If this is resonating with you, if you are ready to get my eyes on your family, if you want my feedback, and if you want to learn how to actually implement this stuff specifically for your family, set up a free discovery call. The link is in the show notes. And if you want to get your question answered on the podcast, send it in. Go to my website, AnnKaplanParentCoach.com, and just use that contact form. Send me your questions. I am actively collecting questions for the podcast, so I will be super happy, and I guarantee your question will get answered. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Bye. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.